Jake Gyllenhaal is back with his trademark intensity, taking on the lead role in the Apple TV Plus adaptation of Scott Turow's Presumed Innocent. It is filled with dynamic and dramatic moments, but can it accurately capture the mystery that drives this story? A horrific murder upends the Chicago Prosecuting Attorney's office when one of their own is suspected of the crime. So in addition to Gyllenhaal, this stars Ruth Negga, Bill Camp, Peter Sarsgaard, and O-T Fagbenle. Now, there are 8 episodes in this show, and each of them are around 40-ish minutes. I've seen 7 out of the 8 because Apple wants to keep the finale this huge secret. Now, the first 2 episodes, they drop at once, and then it is a weekly release until the finale on July 24th. As frustrating as it is for me, I think that's a great thing to keep the finale a secret, especially since even though I have seen the Harrison Ford movie and I've read the novel, I did both of those things like 30 or more years ago, so I only remember the smallest premise of the story. Now this series, it does a phenomenal job of obscuring who the killer is. After watching the majority of the series, I now have 8 to 9 solid suspects that I could make a strong case for them being guilty. I mean, that is a crap ton of characters to still be plausible with only 1 episode left. And that's part of why I was so enthralled with the show. Each episode fills in more details of the crime, but also gives us incredible insight into characters. We learn of mindsets, jealousies, and rifts that all then point to motivations. Every time I thought I was going to eliminate somebody from my list, the story introduces elements of doubt, so once again, that name stays on. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal is wonderful in this. He's carrying the ferocity and strain that he's brought to so many of his other characters, like Robert Graysmith, Detective Loki, Brian Taylor, Joe Baylor, just to name a few of those. And we see passion and extreme focus in his eyes, making it difficult to discern if he's thinking maniacal thoughts or he's just working through facts systematically. As Chief Deputy Prosecutor Rusty Savage, he's explosive, even scary at times with the other characters, carrying forward this driven mentality that keeps everybody on edge. Rusty is also a very cold and unsympathetic character. The way he's written and portrayed, it's difficult to really get behind him. And while that can sometimes make for a poor storytelling choice, here it creates a conflicted emotion. We may not like him, but does that mean that he deserves what he gets? Ruth Negga plays Rusty's wife, Barbara, and I am just loving her steady but fierce portrayal. She convincingly shows us how she's holding everything together for the sake of family, but the inner torment and turmoil are just ripping her insides apart. She's also a very sympathetic character, but not one that comes across as weak. She is a fighter, and she can hold her own in every circumstance. Now, I was surprised to see Bill Camp in this, but he's always a favorite of mine because he's just this wonderful mix of compassion and snark. And he can come across as somebody who has this caring demeanor, but also one who's not afraid to call it as it is if somebody's being an a-hole. Now here, he's Rusty's boss and friend. Their relationship, it is caustic at times, but surprisingly, still filled with respect and regard. And Camp plays grumpy in this convincing way. And it's just the tone that the show needs to direct ire when it's called for. Now, Peter Sarsgaard is another of those characters who we are meant to despise just because of how slimy he is. And he's another prosecuting attorney, making him a colleague of Rusty's. And they exhibit an awesome antagonistic relationship right out of the gate. Sarsgaard plays his character of Tommy Molto as somebody who's cagey, most likely untrustworthy, potentially shady, but certainly full of himself, which I think is great because some of that also can perfectly describe Rusty, making them very similar, and then that creates excellent sparks. And then we have O-T Fagbenle playing Nico Della Guardia. Now, he is also in the prosecuting attorney's office, and his position sets up some engaging inter-office conflict. He plays Nico as cautious but not timid, and while he does view himself as self-important, it's not nearly to the degree as Molto's view of himself. There are a handful of supporting actors that are all crushing it as well, building on the list of not only potential suspects, but those adversely affected by the crime and the trial. We get some wonderful emotive sequences from the supporting cast, showcasing heartbreak, devastation, fury, even disappointment. And these make the interactions more engaging and can work to keep us emotionally engaged, especially if we've had long scenes with Rusty, Molto, or both of them, and they can just suck the oxygen out of a room thanks to their hubris and ferocity. Now, so much of this show's first half is the investigation and discovery of clues and facts. Then the latter half of the season dives into the court case. And both are riveting in their own ways, allowing us to get huge insights into each of the characters. And this is where a lot of the misdirection, or maybe at least doubt, comes into play. As we hear witnesses and follow the evidence as it's discovered, along with watching the day-to-day life of our characters, we're privy to elements and moments that could potentially point to guilt. There are a ton of flashbacks too. Sometimes they're jumbled and super quick, not really allowing us the time to exactly see all that's going on. Then other flashbacks, they're shown to us with a good deal of patience, allowing us to hear conversations and watch actions so we can get a better understanding of what happened and in context. Now, sometimes in the series, we get some discombobulating camera movements that make it extremely difficult to focus or see what's occurring. There's one point when Rusty gets a text, and he holds the phone so that we as the audience are supposed to be able to read it. The camera, though, is moving around to such a degree that the image never comes into focus. And then it proceeds to follow Rusty around a room as he searches for items, all the while just causing slight seasickness due to the bobbing and weaving unsteady motion of the camera. Now, while this wasn't the norm, I didn't like the inconsistency of some of the shots, especially when so much of the show isn't presented this way. While I can see how the series may feel a bit drawn out in telling this mystery through 8 40-minute episodes, I was riveted, and it didn't feel like we were getting information rehashed unnecessarily. There are some repeated flashbacks, but these are typically framed in different contexts each time, allowing us to see a new perspective, which not only works towards solving the crime, but also creates new layers of doubt. And the pacing for each episode, it's deliberate and driving. And it's not so fast-paced that they're rushing the narrative, but there is a palpable intensity and urgency to get this solved. And I think after just seeing the first 2 episodes when they drop, you're going to be hooked on the performances and the whodunit aspect. So overall, Presumed Innocent is a thrilling crime mystery that effectively introduces more than a handful of plausible suspects, maintaining complex intrigue through emotionally charged performances. Gyllenhaal and Negga are outstanding, showcasing relatability and struggle through a dynamically damaged relationship. Sarsgaard shines with his sleazy and sketchy portrayal, casting doubt and suspicion not only on himself, but several others around him. And while some of the camera work is more distracting than helpful, the storytelling is compelling, wrought with urgent strife and relentless pursuit. If you haven't seen the Harrison Ford movie version, or haven't read the novel by Scott Turow, or maybe you just simply can't remember the outcome of it, you're in for a tense and riveting journey told through spellbinding performances. There's a lot of sex, some nudity, a ton of profanity, and some extremely brutal violence. I give Presumed Innocent 4.5 out of 5 couches. And I know I still have to see the final episode, but I'm confident that this is going to conclude with a gratifying resolution. So if you watched any great mysteries lately, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.